It's about time that we address the mistreatment of people who've had alien abduction encounters. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis Brooks. And in this segment of Conscious Commentary, I'm going to break down my thoughts on an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show way back in 1994 that had me shaking my head over how insensitive she was while interviewing several people about their alien abduction encounters. Let's get into it. Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. I was actually doing some research on another commentary segment about this idea of intergenerational contact encounters. This is a facet of this whole dynamic that I've long been interested in. And in the midst of doing this research, I stumbled upon a short clip on YouTube from an old episode of Oprah when they last called it the Oprah Winfrey Show 30 years ago, where she's interviewing the late Harvard psychiatrist and alien abduction researcher John Mack, along with several of his patients, about the whole abduction phenomenon. Now, in this particular segment, Oprah is, shall I say, grilling, almost courtroom style, a brother and sister about their lifelong encounters. Now, I'm going to take you through this. Obviously, I can't show you any clips because of copyright issues, but I'm going to kind of take you through what I saw, and then I'm going to make sure I have a link for you so you can view it for yourself. So let's get into it. So first, she questions a young woman. Her name is Glenda, who says her encounters began at the age of 5. She goes on to discuss how beings came into her room. She proceeds to run out of the room into her parents' bedroom, and apparently after that, she blacks out. She then goes into some of her conscious recollections and also the knowledge that her brother, whose name is Randy, also has had many encounters, but neither of them would discuss it until many years later, she said. Now, Oprah then cuts to Randy, her brother, who's sitting next to Glenda. By the way, John Mack is also with them on stage during the segment. And Oprah asks Randy to share his story, which he does. But Oprah has this sense of complete cynicism and callousness. Okay, so then after that, after she questions Randy, she then turns to the audience where Randy and Glenda's mother is sitting and asks her to get to get up, to stand up and speak, so she can verify what Randy had just told Oprah. Now, by the way, I'll be like I said, I'm going to make sure that I have this link because I want you to see this for yourself. But cut to the mother, so she's clearly uncomfortable with the setting. She proceeds to verify, however, everything that both siblings shared, but Oprah cuts her off halfway through the mother's recollection of her children coming to her to describe what had just happened. And she says, Oprah says, so when he told you at 10, you say, oh, right, honey, right? Assuming the mother wouldn't believe her son. Now, fortunately, the mother corrected Oprah and said no. She goes on to tell what happened next, ignoring Oprah's clearly leading question. But it doesn't stop there. Oprah again proceeds to lead the mother with, so you told your son it was his imagination, right? Fortunately, the mother didn't give in to Oprah's clear attempt at leading her into what she wanted to hear, or what the audience wanted to hear moreover, perhaps. At least that's what Oprah was assuming. Okay, let's leave that for now. Next, Oprah turns back to Randy and asks him to explain more about that particular encounter. Now, without getting into exactly what he shared, and again, you can watch the short segment for yourself, the point is this young man was completely traumatized just in the retelling of the story of what happened to him during this encounter, to the point where he had to catch his breath several times. So it was clear that Randy was having a really hard time reliving some of his encounters. Not so much the sister, interestingly, but it seems that for some reason Oprah had been unfairly picking on Randy even more. And he was candid about how fearful his experiences were. And he was also candid about the fact that it was difficult for him to share his story. You could clearly see he was pretty shaken up. In fact, in a little bit, before we wind down today, I want to share with you a couple of things I later learned about that episode and the young man Oprah had been grilling so hard, Randy. But back to the questioning. So after Randy shared a bit of his encounters, several of them, and admits he had a hard time with this whole part of his life, Oprah then asks, well, why? And he says, because I don't want to believe it. Because I don't want to believe it. I mean, for anyone who's consistently being subjected to such trauma, at least in his case, and frankly, many abduction cases I've come to learn about, of course there's this sense of disbelief, this surreal situation. It is surreal. But here's what really gets me. Oprah responds by saying, because I'm thinking I wouldn't mind it happening to me. I'll never forget when I heard her say that. Cue the audience laughter, and they did a little bit. This really reminds me of a conversation I had here on the show several years ago with Reverend Michael Carter, another very brave, lifelong contactee who was really candid, not only about his fear around his own encounters, but about how when some people that he knew would ask him, hey, man, next time they show up, why don't you just ask them who they are? What's their name? Where are they from? And he was like, are you crazy? He goes on to say, look, when you see a couple of strange beings come walking through your walls into your bedroom, catching you completely off guard, the last thing you're thinking of is asking them, where are they from? Are you kidding? As a matter of fact, I think I want to play a little clip for you here so you can see what he said. He was clearly shaken up just in retelling, similar to Randy. Watch this.
Right through, and I'm telling you, that is a heart stopper. When you're home by yourself and you're trying to get some rest, I mean, what do you? I don't know. I used to get insulted when people say, "Well, why didn't you ask them where they were from? Well, what's happening in the world?" I'm just somebody just walked through my wall, man, and told me, "Don't be afraid," which is easy for them to say.
So it was with this same casual, and I might add, ignorant curiosity that Oprah displayed when making the statement, I wouldn't mind it happening to me. Really? Okay, enough of that. Let's move on. So here's where I really lost my cool with her entire demeanor and her approach. She eventually says to Randy, the young man, after he goes into some of what he's learned about others who have had similar encounters, Oprah says, uh, yeah, but where's the proof? She went there. Yeah, but where's the proof, Randy? I mean, if it happens all the time, she said something like, if it happens all the time, why not take a picture? Now, Randy at this point says, I've actually tried, never works. I've used video cameras, I've used still cameras, I've rigged equipment, nothing ever works. She completely ignored that. By the way, this too is something we in the field of ufology are very familiar with. As a matter of fact, I know an individual, you may know the name too, Steve Mera, who has had multiple attempts on some of his deep dive investigations and sky watches, along with a team where they've tried their level best to get some footage of, close UFO sightings to no avail. So it not only that, equipment has been known to just stop working, or just shut down automatically. So these are clearly things that are known in the field and the investigative aspect of ufology. But I digress. Um, I want to pause here to make something really clear. Sure, this was a show done by Oprah that happened 30 years ago, 1994. And to be fair, we as a society have come a distance in how we look at the whole ET UFO phenomenon. Of course, with the more recent developments of David Grush coming forward, congressional hearings, other whistleblowers coming forward, more to come, I'm sure. And for whatever it's worth, perhaps all of this activity is moving the needle ever so slightly toward a more robust discussion about the seriousness of this phenomenon, whatever it is. But when it comes to the experiencers of contact, the young individuals or older people, people of all ages, from all walks of life, all cultures, whatever is happening to them, whatever is happening to them, this is a serious affair and it deserves to be treated as such. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to over the years and still to this day who are literally traumatized by what has happened to them. You know some of those stories. Maybe some of those stories are yours. I also want to point out, in all fairness, that not all encounters with non-human intelligence are frightening. I've also spoken to individuals who welcome and embrace their experiences and who feel at some level that they're willing participants in the whole affair. But sadly, many more aren't. They're not in that camp. They may strive to be, but they're not there yet. And so the last thing that they need is to add insult to injury by being grilled with unnecessary questions, unfair ridicule, bullying, or insinuating they're lying, or at a minimum, embellishing the truth. Absolutely, there are people out there doing just that, embellishing the truth. But in my humble opinion, there are many who are not. Their encounters are not intentionally made up or even confabulated. They're brutally real, whatever they are, and however they are happening. And by the way, many of these individuals don't even want their stories to come out. Many have spoken out and have regretted it later because of the blowback they received. Some of these individuals are going through such incredible, I'm going to call it PTSD, that they've considered suicide. That's right. And some have succeeded. Others may be dealing with chronic depression, anxiety, extreme phobias. I've talked about that. Addictions of all kinds, you name it. This is the part of the UFO phenomenon that deserves to be taken seriously, not treated with the disdain and the humiliation that so many still have no problem dishing out to these individuals, including what I saw with Oprah. I want to say for the record, look, this isn't an Oprah smear campaign, but I was frankly surprised to see such a level of callousness, particularly with somebody who is known or was known, let's say, particularly in those early years and, the ongoing Oprah Winfrey show, of her compassion for people in this regard. So when I discovered this segment with Oprah and decided to do a commentary around it, I found out a few things, and I'm going to share this with you first. I actually learned from a source who shared with me that they had learned that Oprah herself had a friend, has a friend maybe still, who would contact encounters herself or his self. I don't know who the person is. And obviously shared some of these encounters with Oprah. Now, you might say that given her role as interviewer, journalist, talk show host, that she's not going to admit that, certainly not on national TV, particularly at that time. Or could she have? I mean, we know that Oprah built her reputation on her ability to relate with many of the people that she's interviewed around a variety of experiences. She's been known to be very candid about her own upbringing, as an example, and some of the abuse she suffered. I wonder, in retrospect, with her status, even going back to 1994, if she had shared even just a few sketchy details about her being somewhat familiar with this phenomenon, she wouldn't have had to go into all of that much detail about it. How she might have shifted the narrative and the paradigm of how this whole dynamic is viewed. Imagine where we might be right now. Not saying this would have absolutely been the result, but who knows? Instead, obviously, she took the producer's orders and kept it safe, with the assumption that the audience would favor her hard line of questioning over her usual compassion toward individuals who've suffered greatly, whatever the reason. Hmm. So, as I was researching for this little commentary, I decided to take to ChatGPT. I just wanted to test its ability, let's just say, to pick up on an honest consensus specifically about this particular episode, namely to see if there was any bias in its assessment. I want to read something to you. Now, it definitely was able to identify that particular show back in 1994. But when I asked GPT what Oprah's stance or response was while interviewing these individuals on the show, here's what it came back with. Let me read this to you. Oprah Winfrey approached the subject of alien abductions and Dr. John Mack's work with his patients in her usual open-minded and empathetic manner, but also with a level of curiosity and skepticism that is typical of her interview style. Oprah displayed empathy toward the individuals who described their abduction experiences, as she often does when her guests share personal and emotional stories. She seemed to respect the trauma and confusion that many of Dr. Mack's patients expressed, focusing not just on whether the events were real, but on how the experiences affected their lives. Oprah was known for creating a safe space for her guests to express themselves, and this episode was no different in that regard. You know what? Go ahead and pause this video right now. Go click on the link and watch the short segment. I want you to watch it. Then come back and let me know what you think. What did you see? Now, look, in all fairness, I've only seen the clip. I watched it about 5 or 6 times, and it's only about 6 minutes long. I have not seen the full segment, although I vaguely remember uh, actually seeing it many years ago. But based on what I did see in that segment, there is no way you could describe Oprah's stance as empathetic, nor would I consider this a safe space for her guests to express themselves, at least not in this particular instance. Now, I also want to share with you a revelation about Randy, who we discussed earlier. At the time of that show, I found out he was 27 years old. He's now 57 years old. Randy's full name is Randall Nickerson, 57 years old. And he, get this, is the filmmaker who created the well-known documentary about the Ariel School UFO incident in Zimbabwe. That interestingly also occurred, the incident itself, in 1994. But I also discovered that that very episode that Randy was on with Oprah originally aired on September 29th, 1994. The Ariel School incident happened on September 16th, 1994, merely 2 weeks apart. Kind of fun fact. Even synchronistic, perhaps, right? As an aside. Now, Randall, as he is now known, spent over 10 years, I think close to 15 years, working on that documentary, and it's called Ariel Phenomenon. I've seen it, and it's excellent, and I definitely urge that you go search it out for yourself and watch it. I'll also tell you that I had the pleasure of recently speaking with Randy, or Randall, about his appearance on Oprah. We had a nice chat, about an hour long. I wanted to ask him what that experience was like, and I was hoping that he would be candid with me, and I think he was. He gave me permission to share a little bit of his experience. And, you know, candidly, I'm going to just come right out and tell you, he said that his experience on that show was simply horrible. He said it was horrible. In fact, he said that after the taping of that show, he spiraled into another traumatic episode because it stirred up so many memories. I dare say that after watching the way Oprah treated Randy at the time, I'm not surprised. Look, I'm not saying that it was her demeanor that caused the post-trauma episode. Certainly, just having to revisit such intense memories can set you off. But I do feel that her level of intimidation and apathy toward him, where's your proof, as an example, certainly didn't help. But while I was speaking to Randall, I thought to ask him whether or not he felt some of his family members, just kind of digressing on the conversation about the Oprah show, whether any of his family members, in addition to his sister, had also had any sightings or other similar experiences. Let's just say he answered in the affirmative. I'm not going to go into detail here because some of what he shared with me, he did ask me to keep off the record, and I'm obviously going to honor that. But I promise you that I will bring Randall onto the show at some point when he's ready to share more of his experiences. I know it's been traumatic for him all these many years later. Now, as far as the original segment I had planned to bring you, where I really do want to go into the depths of intergenerational or familial contact encounters, we're definitely going to do that. If you recall, I interviewed Billy Carson several months ago, and among the things that we talked about were his own contact encounters, possibly being linked to or part of a lineage of contact within his own family. So I definitely urge you to go and watch that episode. But for now, let me leave you with this. Look, many people experience things that are unexplained, even to and especially to them. Whatever is happening to them, it is real to them. And especially if they have mustered the courage to come forward and share those experiences with others, whether publicly or maybe with just a few people or maybe even just one person. Please, please give them the courtesy, the compassion, and the respect they deserve. You don't have to believe everything they say. You don't have to believe anything they say, nor should you be pressured to do so. But by honoring their courage and their transparency, I'm sure their appreciation for that simple and unconditional act will be far more than you can imagine. Who knows? It may even help to save a life. Imagine that. And to the governments and agencies, by the way, of the world who are intent on digging deeper into this big mystery we call the ET UFO phenomenon, I implore you to start including these incredible and credible, many of them, accounts as integral to this phenomenon and start treating it as such. It's time the experiencers are seen and heard. With that, I'll say thank you for watching and listening. I'll catch you next time on Higher Journeys. Take care.